Today, we're thrilled to welcome Nick Hempton, an Australian-born saxophonist whose journey from Sydney's jam sessions to New York's vibrant jazz scene is as dynamic as his music. Forging his path the old school way, late-night jam sessions and practice sessions on Sydney's Harbour Bridge, Nick arrived in New York City in 2004 and quickly made his mark with his energetic and soulful playing. From leading the Nick Hempton Band and releasing acclaimed albums like The Business and the innovative Catch and Release, to exploring the organ band with his groove heavy albums Night and Owl Slick, Nick continues to captivate audiences with his modern take on classic soul jazz. So join us as we dive into his inspiring journey and the stories behind his signature sound. So Nick, good to see you.
Thank you, Abe. Thanks for having me, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, my pleasure. So we're in the beginning of 2025. Kind of talk to me about what's in store for you this year and what's happened so far, and what you're looking forward to doing this year musically.
Well, we find ourselves at a kind of interesting place here. I think everybody has a little trepidation about the coming year. There seems to be a lot of uncertainty in the air. So I think this is going to affect musicians at least as much as anybody else. Touring, I think, is going to change, this year. I'm not really sure how it's going to work out. I have the tours that I've always done, coming together for this year, and I think it will be a busy one. But there's a lot of uncertainty, so I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. I have a new album coming out next month, which is going to kick things along. It's always a good way to start the year, and plenty of touring coming up. So it's going to be a busy year, and maybe not any different from previous years, but I don't know. Feels a little bit different this year.
Yeah, and also the city feels like it's really bounced back, starting to feel like it's bounced back since the pandemic. At least I feel that way.
Yeah, I
There's
feel
a
that way.
certain
It is.
energy that's back.
Yeah, the energy is back. It's not. It's different than it used to be. Like I don't know if you hang out as late as I do, but it used to be. I would hang out at the village until 4 or 5 in the morning, and that hang is not really there anymore.
Yeah, I used to do that a long time ago, but yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
and
familiar.
maybe it's good. I probably don't need to be doing that anymore. But it was a big part of the New York scene when I was coming up, and the late night jam sessions and just the hang at a lot of clubs around there. And that's not happening, but the people are out there. Like I'm every time I play in New York, and I think most musicians are experiencing this. Rooms are full. There's a lot of tourists out. There's a lot of people interested in coming out and hearing music, which is very encouraging. And a lot of new venues, which is bringing music to people who didn't used to get it before. So I think that's encouraging as well.
Yeah, New York, there's always places that are opening up, and that certainly leads to new opportunities for the musicians, which is, one of the good parts about, not just the tri-state area. There seems to always be new places coming to the
Yeah,
forefront.
and I think we're getting different kinds of venues as well. I mean, I'm sure you've noticed in the past few years, sort of upscale cocktail bars are almost replacing your old stinky, smoky jazz clubs. And in turn, you're getting a different audience coming out. We're getting a lot of young people coming out for date night or cocktail night or whatever, and they may not have ever heard jazz before, and they're coming out to have a night out, and jazz is part of their experience. And maybe we're playing to people who've never heard this before, and that's kind of I mean, it's a different way of dealing with an audience, but a great and a responsibility, I think, but an opportunity to get a new audience.
Oh, 100%. I'll give you that's a great point you're making. I was in communication with one venue, and they really are trying to push, that it's a sort of a night out place where it's not it's business casual, and but that's great. That's how they at least have that vision. They want to present themselves, and that's certainly better than, like, we just don't care and the musicians just go in the corner, and you know
That's
what I
right. And
mean?
it could have so easily gone the other way, where these places just open without music, and replace live music with just cocktails and a jukebox or canned music or whatever. And so it's good that that these new places have taken on jazz as part of the New York experience, and know that people want that alongside their cocktails and their sliders.
Yeah, definitely. Nick, I'd really like to talk to you about your development into the artist you are today. Um, we really need to have certain things happen to us, I think, to really become serious about the music, whether that's one specific teacher or going to a certain concert, hearing a certain record. What were the milestones for you that without those things you wouldn't be the artist you are today? And you can go as early back as you'd like to.
That's a big question, Abe. I was thinking about one of my early teachers just yesterday, actually. So I grew up in Sydney, and there are a lot of good jazz musicians in Sydney, but there's not a great culture of jazz there. So finding the right people to put you on the right path is a challenging thing. I've got lucky, and I wanted to mention a teacher of mine when I was growing up. His name was Bobby Gabbard, not really known outside of Australia, but a fantastic bebop piano player. And I was thinking about like how early he put me onto this idea of the jazz life, because you know American jazz and it doesn't. There's something incongruous about that and sunny beach weather Sydney. It just doesn't seem to go together. And so I would go around to Bobby's house and it would be a bright sunny day, and I'd go into his house and it would be pitch dark. He'd have all the blinds drawn. The place would be full of cigarette smoke. He'd be practicing the piano, and I knew he'd been doing it since 6 o'clock in the morning. He would just all day on the piano, playing, drinking coffee, smoking, listening to records, and it was American jazz in his house. It was like leaving Sydney and walking into jazzland, and it really kind of it opened my mind. You have to the idea that if you're going to do this with any level of seriousness, it's your whole life really. Like you can't, I don't know, you can't just play jazz for an hour a day and leave it at that. It's going to overtake your whole life, and it's a world that you have to sink yourself into. I mean, you can do anything you want. If you want to play on the weekends, fine. But I'm saying if you want to be a full time, proper, serious jazz musician, it's a lifetime operation. And I would go to Bobby's house, and it was black American jazz on the on the record player. That's all he listened to, and it was like this is a world that I want to be a part of. And he
How
and
old
a
were
few
you at
other
that time?
teachers, I was 17, I suppose.
Okay, so you were, about to graduate high school, you're a little older and then
Yeah, and I hadn't really, I mean, I'd only been playing saxophone for about a year at that point. Like, I got a saxophone when I was about 16 and got immediately, like, this took over my life straight away. And Bobby and a couple of other teachers told me that New York is the place to go. You can have your career in Sydney, but if you really want to play jazz, you got to go to New York. So studying with Bobby was a real turning point. And then the first time I came to New York was when I was 20, and that just blew my mind. And that changed everything. I knew this was the place I had to be, and I put everything towards coming here and playing jazz in New York. That was it. And it's just it's not hasn't been like amazingly great ever since. It has like life has a lot of ups and downs, but I came to the right place. Like I made the right choice there.
I understand what you're saying. When I went to school in Boston, I used to take the bus down and go to the village. This is probably back around 2006, 2007. And it was really like walking into a whole nother world. There was nothing like that in Boston. Nothing. You know what I
And it's
mean?
not even just the music. Like I remember when I was 20, walking around the streets of New York, and it was like being in the movies. It was the most incredible thing I'd ever seen. It was all my like it was the jazz album covers that I had posters on my walls. It was the gangster movies that I liked, and it was everything. It was like all that energy, and then you would go down to Smalls at 6 o'clock in the morning for the jam session, and that energy would be there, sort of vibrating around that little room. It was wild, man.
Yeah, you really, and you have to be willing to live in that world if you really want to, make your, you know, make your life as a jazz, like that's your primary source of income to be a musician. You've got to live it every
And
day.
it's not even. I mean, income, yes, but to me, the great thrill about being playing this music is being part of a 100 and something year old community and feeling that I've put the time and the effort and the hours and the love into it that makes me sort of part of that lineage. It's a kind of a special place. Um, and I think if you want to be part of that world, then yeah, you have to be prepared to do it all day, every day.
So when you said you came to New York when you were 20 for the first time, and do you remember the first time you went to a jam session or the first gig you did in New York, or can you remember those things?
At that time, like I was 20, I was here for 6 weeks and I ran out of money. So I didn't I didn't do any gigs. I would sit in every night, the jam session. And I remember, I mean, the Smalls jam session was terrifying to me at that point. Like I'd only been playing for like 3 years, and I'd go down there, and it was like, to me, these gods of saxophones playing. It was incredible. And I would get up there and fumble my way through whatever standards I could and make a fool of myself every night, which is a vital part of the process. And I would play there every night. There's a restaurant on Houston Street called Arturo's where I would go and hang almost every night. That was earlier, and they would give me free pizza, so that was
Yeah.
worth it for me. Um, I'd go there and then play, and then go to Smalls and play, and that was kind of my routine almost every day. And I got to know a few people, but I was young and nervous and didn't really make myself part of the scene at that point. And I was 6 weeks, and I got in and blew my mind and went home again, and came back a couple of years later and tried a bit more. I was here for a year that time, got to know some people, did a few gigs, but they were all very small little bar gigs, and with people who are no longer here. I mean, that's the other thing about this scene. It moves around so fast. You play with somebody, they're gone next week. But the early ones were nothing to write home about. They were just local bar gigs, but you
Yeah,
very
you said
much an
like, yeah,
important part of the process.
they gave you pizza. That's like when you're starting out, that's an accomplishment because I remember I used to do this free gig at this is probably around 2011 or 12 at this place called Pianos in the East Village, and then they started giving us food and we felt like rock stars.
Yeah, it's like we've made it. It's better
Yeah,
than
no,
not better than money, but at that point you need it as much as you need money. So yeah, we'll take that.
like you got the beer and the veggie burger or regular. We're like, oh man, and yeah, that it's. But I don't think people understand like those are the things you have to. I mean, granted, the world has changed, but I'm not sure if people comprehend as much as they used to about those type of situations that you're in, the sacrifices and the willing to pay, put in the time and
Yeah, I mean they call it paying dues, I guess,
paying
and
your
it,
dues.
and
Yeah,
it,
yeah, exactly.
it is a real thing, I think. And not to get too deeply into my concerns about the way the jazz scene has changed regarding education replacing a lot of the things that used to be important, right? But I do think paying your dues and paying and playing kind of crummy gigs, and being taken advantage of and getting ripped off and playing with bad musicians or whatever it is, or music that you don't love, or it's a hard slog, and I think it builds muscles for your future. You're going to be dealing with people trying to rip you off throughout your whole career. That's something that's a good lesson to learn when you're young, and like how to deal with that, or how to, somebody's going to call music that's inappropriate for the room, or something like that. There's just lots of little tiny lessons you learn from these little crummy gigs that will really come in handy later on in your career, and you need them. I do worry that there's less of that out there, that those little gigs have kind of disappeared to some extent. I mean, you're talking about pianos. I remember that place. I was
Cafe
thinking about,
Vivaldi I used to play at every week, which was
yeah,
in
that's
on
right. And
Jones Street.
Jules, did you ever play at Jules?
Jules Bistro, East Village, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was a gig for so many, new New York musicians. I mean, experienced ones as well. And that's where I got to play with some great people. I remember Saul Rubin was running a gig there for a while, and I would play with him, um, and
He's
learn a lot.
tremendous.
Yeah. And that was a crummy gig. Paid terrible. You got a little bit of food, got a couple of drinks, whatever. But it was steady. It was on a Tuesday night usually, so it was like, I don't know. It was those little gigs are very valuable, I think, to your career in the long run.
Absolutely. And that's such a great point. I'm glad you're saying that because I hear, you hear musicians out there is talking about that when you're trying to learn how to do this, you settle for not as much money or just playing for getting food and stuff, and that devalues the home music, the financial part in general. But there is that whole point you have to pay your dues, so it's like you have to almost there's a happy medium, you know what I mean, like
I
it's
do.
or
And it
finding
is,
that balance, which is so hard to like do what they're saying, but you at the same time you have to gain the experience of playing in front of people because nothing will replicate that.
that's right. And it's a fine line that we walk there, because I mean you're right on both sides of that, because you do need to have these experiences as a young musician where you're not making any money and you're playing for people and building your muscles and developing your chops in every side of your playing. But at some point, you have to say no to these because it's not great for the business for established musicians to be playing for $75 a night.
Yeah.
The problem we have now is that there used to be a delineation between these gigs, and there was an audience that knew the difference. Like there would be an audience that would show up to a cafe gig where there's no cover charge, there's a band playing in the corner. We understand as an audience that these are young musicians, but if I'm going to go to the Vanguard, I'm going to hear something completely different. But I think, unfortunately, as people are exposed to less jazz in their lives, they're less able to tell the difference between college kids playing jazz and a professional band. So
No,
that's
you're
where we have the problem because like the audience doesn't know the difference, and it's now up to the musicians to really say, well, I can't do those gigs, and the venues have to step up as well and pay if they want great musicians, they got to pay for them. It's everyone's responsibility.
that's what it comes down to. The audience, which I actually never thought about that before. That's a great point.
Well, that's something I think about a lot at the moment and how audiences. I mean, I've been playing in New York for 20 years, 20 something, and the change in audiences is really obvious to me, especially since COVID. And it's what we're talking about before. It's a lot of musicians who are unfamiliar with a lot of audience members who are unfamiliar with this music. And we used to have, even in my time here, an educated audience who would know the difference between something great and something shit, and they would let you know. And there's not that much of that anymore, and that's tough. I mean, and like I said, we have the opportunity to make a new audience, but at the same time, they don't know what we're doing anymore.
Yeah, that's one thing. As I've been talking to a lot of musicians on the podcast, there you used to see much more of the elder statesmen, the pioneers of the music, just kind of out and about. But that also just has to do with some of them have passed away and everything. And the world is changing, and so is the music and everything. I think it's just maybe just adapting to it.
I think you're right, and it's difficult. Sometimes it's a challenge not to sort of lament things are not the way they used to be or the
Right.
they should be, but really we have to accept that this stuff is changing and the jazz scene is changing and society is changing. So we have to adapt and just try to get the sorry to get heavy, but the truth out to as many people as we can. It's still our job.
Yeah, and I think it's important to have these conversations for people to listen to as well. That's one of the reasons I do this podcast. There is that whole other side that people don't they only there's so many misconceptions about the life and everything that goes into it that there needs to be that conversation.
I think you're right.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the in order to keep going with this lifestyle and you play as much as you do, you get inspiration on the bandstand all the time from the musicians you play with. Um, do you I know when you said you started playing, you'd only been playing for 3 years, and then you said it was so challenging. Do you still feel like I mean, obviously, I'm sure it's not as much of a challenge as it used to be, but is it still a challenge? Because certain musicians say, yeah, it's a challenge. Some like, no, this is home for me. How do you look at it playing improvised music?
Oh, okay. Um, I kind of agree with both those perspectives. Certainly, getting on the bandstand with musicians you trust and love is very much a homecoming because I mean, I know that feeling every night. Like I tend, I get nervous before gigs. I get nervous. I've got to run a show. I've got to talk on microphones. I've got to remember things. Whatever. There's some anxiety leading up to any performance. I think, which is good. Um, but I know that feeling disappears like that as soon as at the first demo
Yeah.
because suddenly you've got this. It's like a hug. It's like people would just come up and hug you. You get this beautiful surrounding sound that makes you feel wonderful, and that is like a homecoming, like you said. Um, but then, I mean, the challenge starts then, and is it difficult? Yeah, I mean, it is because I mean everybody's got their own challenges when they're playing and what they're aiming for. And for me, at this point, I'm trying to perform with as much clarity and honesty as I can, and that's challenging. There's a lot of shit going on in life. There's a lot spinning around in your brain. You can't turn it off. There's somebody out there who's annoying you. There's somebody back there who's annoying you. I don't know. It's the challenge is being open and honest and playing with an open heart to people. And there's a lot of things waiting to get in the way there. So that's the challenge to me is to get out there and just play freely and openly.
Yeah, that's one challenge, and that's a really, great point you're making, and how you overcome that. The music can take over. I was actually talking to Ralph Lalama about this because I wanted to hear his perspective. I like to hear yours too. When you play, some nights it's just not like you can tell right away, shit's not happening. Like either rhythmically between the way the drums and the bass are playing, like the way it's just not there, and you know right away. But you kind of have to like get over the mountain. So when you're faced with challenges like that when you play, how do you think you get past that to the other side? Or is it just, you have to just accept and this is gonna suck in some ways?
Yeah, I mean that's tough because I don't think I can ever accept that this is just going to suck for the whole gig.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah.
I mean, there is a part of that. Like one of the challenges of what we do is doing it night after night, and not every night's going to be great. And
Right.
sometimes you have to do your best, the best that you can for one night, and just go do it again the next night. And one night is going to be fantastic and magical, and I know the other 9 out of 10 are going to be they're going to be issues. You don't get that great moment every night. So whatever the reason is, I'm not feeling great about my playing, or I'm having reed trouble, or there's somebody's, giving me some shit during the day or whatever, and I've got a lot going on in my mind. Or the same thing is going on behind me. Somebody's having a bad day, the drumsticks are not feeling right, or whatever. There's some tension, there's some weirdness in the room. But even then, it's like every minute you have to come and make it better. Like if it's out of my hands, I guess there's nothing I can do except play the best I can and be as
Yeah.
honest with people as I can. But if it's me, every every chorus is a chance to shut this thing up and try and play for these people. So I think it's just a constant. It's night after night, but it's also tune after tune. We've got to make the next one happen.
Yeah. Minute by minute, tune after tune, like
Yeah,
it's just we're just trying to
exactly.
get to where we need to be. Do
I'm going to go back to Ralph's one and hear what he had to say about that because I'm kind of curious.
Oh no, Ralph says I asked he said I just try to be a bull in a china shop.
See, and that's a kind of a good way of getting around it as well. Like just make it happen with determination and force. That can work as well.
Yeah. Because that's the thing, like you can have all of, your whole life could be together. You've practiced that day, you felt good, but then you get there and then there's like something just that's the one, and that's uncertainty too that just comes in. You don't know, and it's better just to just be. But that's
Yeah,
a
I think, and Ralph makes a good point there. I mean, you can if things are not going your way. I mean, you can't work it out. You haven't got the time to figure out what's bothering you. So sometimes you just need to put the horn in your mouth and play loud, and
yeah.
the hell with the rest of it.
Yeah, there's no time for a powwow. It's just,
Exactly.
let's just do it. So, let's rewind a little bit. You were exposed by your mentor. You went to his house and you really got that experience, and you knew at the time that you were around something really special. We have growth that comes into, when we do this, we become different people, different musicians. If you could go back now and tell your younger self, maybe give your younger self some advice, what do you think you would say? Because I think this is helpful for, younger musicians to hear these types of things.
I think I'm going to let you down with this one, Abe. I'm sorry. I
No,
uh,
it's
I don't know that I would do anything different. I mean, I've done a lot of dumb things, and a lot of things that I would never recommend anyone do. But at the same time, they were the thing for me to do at the time. I made a lot of stupid mistakes, and that's it's hard to explain. I taught a lesson to somebody the other day, and I thought, I don't get a lot of young musicians asking me for lessons, And we got to the end of an hour's lesson, and I realized that I'd talked to him for an hour about sort of love and heartache and loss and life experience and the musician's obligation to express the complexity of the human experience or some bullshit like this. It's not bullshit. I believe in it, but it's a hard sell, and it's something that I want. I kind of want young musicians to realize that you are actually playing a life for people. You're not just playing the bunch of things that you learned and stuck together in a way that somebody told you to, or the harmonic concepts that you got out of a book. All that stuff is valuable, but at the end, what you have to do is play from this to the person out there. And if you haven't had a life to live, there's no story there. There's just stuff. So to me, leading a full and great or terrible or whatever life it is, that's make all the mistakes you can, and that's how you become a complex individual and are able to sort of understand the human experience and then play it, you know? So I know I wouldn't tell my younger self anything really. I would probably say go and screw up like you did last time.
Yeah. I would tell my younger self, because when I went to college, I didn't leave my apartment for like 4 years, like and I just kind of like practiced, that was my journey, and that's how, that's fine. But I would probably tell my younger self, like, maybe, uh go get into some trouble or so, you know what I mean? Like, or go on a retreat, or go expand get out of your way. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That sort of
I,
thing.
I know what you mean, and in some ways, I mean, some people have some kind of life mentor in that way, which I never really had. It was only musical. Nobody told me how to run a career or really organize a life. So I had to work out how to do it myself. And some people will lead you on the right path and let you bypass the unhelpful mistakes that you made. And I don't know, I wouldn't do that. I would just go and learn. I mean, it's a whole life in it. Like we're not trying to become perfect human beings by the time we're 25, so then we can become musicians for the rest of our life. It's a whole life thing. You're going to keep fucking up your life until you die, and your playing is going to change because of that, because of who you are as a person. So no, I mean, I think it would be a waste of energy to try and avoid life's mistakes. I think it's part of the journey.
Definitely. No, Nick, this has been so great. Thank you so much for doing this, and it was very informative. What's your, where can everybody find your social media if you just want to plug that, and any website? Can you just share that really quickly?
Sure. Everything is under Nick Hempton Band. So nickhemptonband.com. All the social media is Nick Hempton Band. And yeah, schedule's up on the website.
Beautiful.